certain groups of scientists seem to get rather nervous about the implications of death and the many complex strings that attach themselves to the studies of consciousness. In fact, the field of parapsychology is considered an orphan, lost kind of sister of science. Unfortunately, this is a very telling example of how we throw the baby out with the bathwater. All of us are conscious. All of us are experiencing our minds, intelligences, our egos, and yet science doesn't seem to have the attention span or the patience or the humility to study consciousness in any detail without relegating it to the realm of a myth. Now, recently, maybe you know, there was I think it was a £10 million grant given to a group of cardiologists and anesthesiologists who were already studying near-death and out-of-body experiences. It was all over the news for the latter part of last year, the fall. It was featured in many newspapers. And some American scholars got involved, and some Dutch researchers and doctors got involved. And out of that, there was a documentary published called The Day I Died. And if you ever want to, if you want a little bit of entertainment, go on YouTube. It's broken into 4 parts. And it's amazing how you see this long stream of talking heads on both sides of the equation. Is it a soul? They're studying death, right? Is it what they call an epiphenomenon? Is consciousness the byproduct of random forces working on complex material elements? And when we're examining these discussions, it's very frustrating to see how much time these so-called scientists have for denial. What's so difficult about the soul? For instance, has anyone here heard of Occam's razor? Occam's razor? Occam's razor is a very helpful and famous mathematical and theoretical tool. And it was developed by a German mathematician in the 13th century. I've forgotten his first name, Occam. And it's the idea that if you're comparing different points of view, creation, evolution, mysticism, reductionism, the best theory is probably the one that requires the least amount of intellectual contortionism. In other words, the simplest theory is probably the one that makes the most sense, and it's also the one that probably works. Now, what's simpler than the soul? What could be more simple? We're still experiencing issues here. Help. I think if you were to do a survey on the street, here we go. I think most people would admit that they're conscious and they have some element of free will. Yet, scientists all up and down the spectrum, from physicists to biologists to chemists, they're arguing about whether or not we have free will. Is that something that you can prove? Does anybody have any proof for free will? Here we go. Come on, help me out. Anyone? No proof for free will. Okay. If I open one of these windows and invite you to jump out the window, most of us are going to say no. Why? Because we don't want to suffer and die. That's an exercise of free will. Everybody's different. I'm wearing different clothes than you. That's free will. Free will is all-pervading. There's never a moment where our free will is not at the end of our fingertip. And yet, if you read the writings of very famous scientists like Stephen Hawking or Richard Dawkins, recently there was in the Times, on the front page, there was a picture from the Sistine Chapel of God touching Adam's hand. And the front page news article said, Hawking, colon, God did not create the universe. As though that's front page news. And the whole article is about Stephen Hawking's anger at religion. It's not about any scientific proof. And he says, philosophy is dead. Philosophers have not kept up with the forefront of physics. But How can you use physics or the language of measurement to describe causality or consciousness? You can't describe any complex causality with mathematics. Mathematics can only decorate effects. And these hooligans, these charlatans, these pseudoscientists, they like to muddle and murk up the cause and effect distinction and congratulate themselves that they've discovered the origins of the universe, the origins of life. Now, what I'm going to do is just cherry pick through a chapter in a book I'm writing on the yoga of physics and the power of personalism. This is a chapter entitled Reincarnation and the Ambiguity of Consciousness. Let's see if I can, let's do this. Can everyone read this size font? Let's see. What I thought we'd do is we continue what we did last week, which seemed to have been a lot of fun, and we just read, and we can take turns reading a little bit what people have realized about reincarnation. Okay. Where are we going? Sorry about this. The computer's acting a bit funny now. Okay. All right, we've lost our bearings here. Sorry about this. Okay, here we go. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Why is reincarnation something that science has a hard time with? Does anyone want to venture a guess?
Because the scientists they themselves don't want to be responsible or accountable for their actions.
One word. Prabhu, thank you very much. One word. Accountability. When we study consciousness, what happens? The strings of causal accountability start to show up. Can anybody give me speculate as to what I'm talking about? Can you give me an example? Anybody? Am I talking out of my hat?
That means God is in control, not scientists.
Yeah. Thank you. Did everybody hear that? Because anybody with half their eyes open or half a wit can see that actually some intelligence must be in control, and I am not. And scientists hate to admit that. So, who has a good speaking voice and enjoys reading? Anyone? Last week we stopped at the end of where Krishna speaks from the Bhagavad Gita, and some questions were raised about the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and is there a relationship? And we didn't get to answer that question. That person who asked that question is not here today, but the Tibetan Book of the Dead is full of information about what happens to us after death. And the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is better entitled Coming into the Light by Day, or the Book of the Duat, is also full of information about what happens after death. So I'll start off here. I'm just going to read from the Egyptian Hermetic fragment from the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. It says, "The soul passes from form to form, and the mansions of her pilgrimage are manifold. Thou puttest off thy bodies as raiment, and as a vesture dost thou fold them up. Thou art old, O soul of man, yea, thou art from everlasting." So, it's interesting how in the Vedas the soul is described as property. Does anybody know what property means?
Energy.
Yes, energy?
Nature.
Nature? Yes. Another definition of property?
Someone's possession.
Yes, it means possessed, or it means enjoyed, but it also means feminine. By nature, we're feminine in comparison to Krishna. Krishna is the Adi Purush. He is the only male, really. Everyone else, down here at least, is kind of imitating Krishna to one degree or another. No matter if we're male or female, most of us are trying to be the magnet for everybody else's attention. Or at least that seems to be part of our common pathology or